Okay, we shift from Egypt to the Near East empires. So our next section after Egypt are the Near East empires. We're picking up here around 1200 BC. This is the time of the decline of the Egyptian New Kingdom. And we're going to look at the Near East kingdoms, or Near East empires. And this is referring to the entire area, including Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and beyond that. And we're picking up at around 1200 BC when things start to happen here. This is the start of a new age, around 1200 BC, the start of the Iron Age. Iron comes in. And iron is a very strange thing. It's everywhere. It's very common, but it's not very useful. It's very brittle. It doesn't make a good weapon just in its natural state. It had to be done a certain way to make it useful as a weapon, and it's done from the north. And this is up in Europe. There are people up there. They're not civilized, but there are people living there. And these are the people who learn to make iron. And about that time that they have the iron, they'll start to migrate south into Mesopotamia and Egypt. And when the iron comes in, it's going to be the end of the Bronze Age. Bronze is still useful, but it's very rare. It's hard to make, whereas iron is going to be plentiful once it's properly used and properly processed. When it comes into Europe, when it comes into these civilizations here in the Middle East, it is going to be the end of one Greek civilization. These are the Mycenaeans. It'll be the end of Hittite. The Hittite Empire will collapse under the weight of these new people coming in. And it'll be the decline of Egypt's new kingdom. It corresponds with all this. All these things happen about the same time, around 1200 BC. Iron, these new invaders coming in. What's happening in Europe, if we look north of the Fertile Crescent, what's happening up in Europe, dating from 4000 BC, these people aren't civilized yet, but we have archaeological evidence that they are farming, planting seeds and growing crops, and they're also raising animals. There's archaeological evidence of them staying in one place, not chasing animals around, but actually in one place farming and raising animals. And at this time, they are building structures. This is called the Megalithic period. Mega, large, lithic stone. They're building huge stone structures in circles, dragging big rocks and putting them in circles. We don't know why exactly. We can take a best guess. Something to do with the sunrise, something to do with the stars, or lunar patterns, something like that. Maybe some kind of calendar, maybe some system of worship, a temple of some sort. There is evidence or reports of Druids. Once people start to ask what these things are, the people will say, these were built by Druids. So some sort of nature worship people. The largest of them is Stonehenge. The most interesting, obviously, is the Stonehenge in England, southern England, on a huge flat plain. These giant rocks were dragged many miles to get here. How they did it, we don't know. What it's for, we don't know. These giant rocks in the middle of a field. We think it looks something like this, a much bigger structure with all kinds of concentric circles. Somehow June 21st lines up over this rock over here in the corner. Sunrise over June 21st, so June 21st is a big day there at Stonehenge. But it's not the only stone circle. There are many others. They're in England, France, Spain, just all over Europe, this megalithic period of uncivilized people. And then around 1200, they start to move south. For some reason or other, they begin to migrate toward civilization. These are Indo-European. The language that they speak is Indo-European, common to present-day India, common to present-day Europe. This language structure comes. They move south toward the Mediterranean Sea, maybe because of an ice age, maybe just to escape other people. There's always migrations of people, so maybe people are pushing these people south. They come in with their iron weapons. This is going to make them superior. They come in with their iron tools. This is going to make them unstoppable and useful and agriculturally active so they can have a big population. So here comes the migration. And they come into Greece. Again, goodbye to the Mycenaeans. Those are the people that were fighting Troy. That civilization is destroyed. They come into Asia Minor. Goodbye to the Hittites. That empire will collapse. And then they'll come into the Fertile Crescent in various ways. Some of them will walk in, others of them will take a boat in. So here's a map. You can see the European migration just coming in all directions out of Central Europe where they have iron, and coming into Mesopotamia, coming into Greece, and eventually down to Egypt, and eventually down into the Fertile Crescent. So into the Fertile Crescent come these people, many different types, many different peoples. There's different reports all over of these new people with their iron weapons. In one place, they're called Philistines. And the only reason I'm going to mention these Philistines is because they're in the Bible. But it's an interesting little case study of some of these Iron Age people coming in and settling in Palestine, where around present-day Jerusalem or present-day Israel, along the coast. They're actually a coastal people, and they have found a happy place. They are in this land of milk and honey, as the Bible describes it. So they got there first with their iron weapons and their iron tools, and this is described in the Bible, actually, when the Hebrews meet these Philistines, that these Philistines have iron, and they're not willing to share it. That's a kind of a secret. And they're better military. I'll just give you a hint. Goliath is a Philistine, and you can picture him in armor, very large individual compared to the Hebrew farmers in a second. But these people are into farming. They have a good military, very, very active people, these Philistines. I just want to mention one of their gods. One of their gods is named Baal. He is a bull god. And this is going to come up in the Bible, that the Hebrews are going to start becoming, some of them, interested in this bull god, a golden calf. So they've come into the Fertile Crescent. We think these Philistines landing in this area here may have come by sea, came in from Greece and maybe over to the Mediterranean, landing in this area. But again, there's all kinds of reports. Reports in Greece, reports in North Fertile Crescent, reports of landings in Egypt down there. So it's just everywhere going on. It's at this same time, all these new people coming in, it's at the same time that the Exodus takes place, or we think it does. There's no dating in the Bible to speak of, but we can kind of figure out archaeologically and common sense that it occurred around 1200, around the time of Ramses II, either before him or after him, but somewhere around 1200. Basically, all hell's breaking loose. So these Hebrews are going to Exodus out of Egypt, out of their slavery. Moses, they have a leader, leading these Hebrew people out of bondage, away from Pharaoh. Which Pharaoh? We don't know. Maybe Ramses II. That would be impressive. If it's Ramses II, that would be really impressive to have escaped Egypt under such a great Pharaoh. Anyway, Moses leads them out of slavery, out of bondage, out of Egypt, into the Sinai. So this is to the east. He is leading them, he could have led them to the south, the west, but he leads them to the east, into the Sinai Peninsula. This is a bit of a wasteland, and the Bible says that he leads them for 40 years. So basically this is a long time, a couple of generations to get from about 100 miles from Egypt to the Fertile Crescent. The indication here is that this is not easy. He's not welcome in Egypt anymore, and he's not welcome in the Fertile Crescent either. He's going to have to fight to get into there. So 40 years kind of in limbo there. The Bible says that the Hebrews were fed with manna because it's a wasteland there. Somehow they survived. And they have to fight versus polytheism. There are mentions of polytheism, the golden calf that some of the Hebrews are getting in touch with, or maybe some of their old Egyptian gods. So there's working against this polytheism because Moses wants them to follow this one God, the God that led them out of Egypt. So here's a picture of the Sinai. It is a wasteland even today. It's not the most attractive place. And then Mount Sinai in the background where Moses will go up the mountain to receive God's laws. And he will come back with monotheism for his Hebrews people, Hebrew monotheism. If you're wondering about this God, he does have a name. The one God's name is YHWH. Jews don't pronounce this. They will just say Adonai. When they see this in the Torah, they will just say Adonai, the great one. But you could pronounce it if you want. How would you pronounce YHWH? The Hebrew letters YHWH. You can pronounce it Yahweh, YHWH, Yahweh. Or you could also pronounce it where the Y has a J sound, and you could call him Jehovah. So Yahweh, Jehovah, or just Adonai, if you don't want to say his name. Most Christians would just say the Lord, God, the Almighty. So we kind of avoid saying his name, but the Hebrews definitely don't say his name. There it is in Hebrew. YHWH. They read right to left. So more about Moses. He goes up the mountain. He's trying to keep these people together, and he goes up the mountain and he brings the law. He is the lawgiver, bringing down this one God's law. And it starts off with 10 commandments, a whole list of these things. The first one is the most interesting of them. Thou shalt have no God before me. And the word before me, a lot of Jewish historians will say that kind of indicates that there is some polytheism. They're not completely set on this one God. that you should have no gods before me. That's always brings the historical interaction there. Why not just say there, you shall have no other gods? The Ten Commandments is just the warm-up, though. There are lots and lots of laws there. Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So lots of laws there for the Hebrew people. They're a people of laws. Moses will lead them for 40 years and taking them toward Palestine. Moses leading the Hebrews into the new land, the land of milk and honey, this fertile crescent. But there are people there. So this is not going to be necessarily easy. He must confront these people, these Hebrews, incomers, these new people must confront the other people, the Philistines. There is going to be a battle here. Not just among the Philistines, but also with other people there. So there's a lot of fighting. So when the Hebrew people come in order to settle, you're going to have to fight. So you could say settling and fighting, or fighting and settling. There's a lot of fighting going on here. The Hebrews will be led by the judges, these warrior leaders, Joshua, Jonathan, Samson, Saul, because there's a lot of fighting. This doesn't come easy. In fact, they had to come in around the Dead Sea and kind of come in through the back, through Jericho. Jericho will be their first victory. And not until they get to David. When they get to David, now things are happening. They have a really powerful man leading them. You know his story. He starts off as just a shepherd boy, using a sling, the most common weapon of a shepherd. And the story is that he defeats a Goliath. But literally, you could take this literally, or that he defeated a large Philistine, or you can take it symbolically that he's taking on this huge power, the Philistines, these people with iron weapons, and all he has is sling stones, and yet he will defeat, well, he doesn't defeat them actually, he'll defeat other people. But he starts off as a guerrilla leader, attacking from the roads. The Hebrews are shepherding people, and so they will come out of the woods or out of the scrub, not on the roads, and attacking the powers that be. So this is guerrilla warfare. And he wins battles. You know, nothing succeeds like success. He is a successful leader, and so other people will start to join him, and then they can start fighting bigger battles, and he wins his battles. And he's able to unify the Hebrew tribes. The Hebrew tribes don't necessarily cooperate, but he gets them to cooperate and get together. He captures Jerusalem. This is a really nice place. It's an inland city, not a port city. It's an inland city near the Dead Sea. And all roads converge there, so it's a really important road junction in the area. He will wear a crown. He will proclaim a Hebrew kingdom. So this is a big step. They have gone from just outsiders and guerrilla fighters to now they have an army and a king and a big city that they can work from. And then the next king, King Solomon, David's son Solomon, is going to be a great and powerful king. If you look at his dates here, 971 to 931, that's a 40-year reign he has. He's going to be a powerful king. From his capital city in Jerusalem, he will reign, and he will gather armies and wage wars and peace treaties. He builds the big temple there. This will be a big moment for the Hebrews, that they have settled to an engineering and architects to be able to build a great temple to the one God. And he rules over a powerful state. The Bible records the size of his armies, and that his cities contribute to the army. Even chariots. Each city has to supply chariots, and so they control the roads now. You have a chariot army and a standing army and a powerful state. Also pomp and ceremony. He is visited by other kings. There are other records of him. It isn't just the Bible anymore. There are other records now of these Hebrew people. And they have a king and a powerful state. There's an artist's conception of the first temple, because it won't be standing much longer. The story of Solomon, the great wise Solomon, confronted with problems and always makes a good decision, confronted with the idea of two women fighting over a baby. Well, cut it in half, and the real mother will come forward. That's during this time that the holy books are put together. We think up to this point, everything was pretty much oral. These are pretty much non-settled people, and so, but now they're settled and putting their writings down and putting them in an Ark of the Covenant, a holy place with supposedly magical power, and it'll disappear. Or, if you want to believe that Indiana Jones found it in a movie, but it will disappear. But that was the Holy Ark, the holding of the holy books of the Hebrews. Solomon dies in 931, and bad things happen now. The kingdom will be split into two. As soon as the great king is gone, things start to fall apart. The kingdom splits into two. The northern tribes break away from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is in the south, and he's conquered to the north. So the northern tribes break away, these 10 tribes. They will create their own kingdom, the kingdom of Israel. To the south, around Jerusalem, these 2 southern tribes will remain holding on to Jerusalem. They call themselves the kingdom of Judah. So now you have 2 Hebrew kingdoms, and they don't get along very well. And this is really bad timing because they're about to get hit by a juggernaut. If they'd have held together under a strong king, they might have been able to fight better, but they're going to get hit by a juggernaut. In 722, the northern kingdoms coming from the north are these Assyrians, and they will hit the northern kingdom first and utterly destroy it. The Assyrians will come in against the kingdom of Israel and utterly destroy it, just wiping out the northern tribes. In fact, there will be no northern tribes after this. The northern tribes will just disappear to the wind. The lost 10 tribes, they're either killed, murdered, and mass murdered, or hauled off into slavery, or just uprooted. They are gone, the lost 10 tribes of the northern kingdom. So what does the southern kingdom do? With having watched what happened to the northern kingdom, and maybe not feeling too much sorrow for them, but the thought is, we can't fight these Assyrians, they're too great. And so the decision is to just pay tribute, bow down to the Assyrians. You don't have to fight them, you can just submit to them. And the tribute is gigantic.